Okay, so you should have your comparing culture chart out. It does have an L2 at the bottom of it, okay? And we are not going to pay attention to all of this page because we haven't gotten there yet, but we're going to look at Cinderella and the rough-faced girl. Okay, we're just going to fill in these boxes very quickly. We can just do this together. All right, so Cinderella. What country is Cinderella based in? And it doesn't actually say in the book, but it is written originally by a French author. So we are going to say that it is in the country of France. Okay. And then the rough-faced girl, it took place on the banks of Lake Ontario, and we have also learned that the Algonquin tribe lived up there in the north in Canada. So they are from the country of Canada. And the interesting thing is that the first people that came from Europe that met with the Algonquin tribe were French people, okay, and that's how the Algonquins got their actual name. It is a French word, okay. So what story elements are unique? And we're comparing, and remember, comparing means how are they the same? Okay, so we're going to write same up here just to remind ourselves the same. Okay, so what story elements are unique? And I'm thinking of the clothes, okay? There's a lot of these two stories that are very similar, but I'm thinking about the clothes that they played such an important role in this story, in both stories, okay? So in Cinderella, remember, she was, well, she didn't get anything nice, not from her stepmother and her stepsisters, but her fairy godmother had given her something very nice, you know, and it took her fairy godmother's magic to do the transformation so that she went from being like a peasant girl to a beautiful princess. Okay, so we're going to put, because in different cultures we do wear different types of clothes, okay? So what story elements are unique? We're going to talk about the clothing, okay? And I'm going to put a couple little notes here. A ball gown, okay? And for Cinderella, it was the glass slipper. Glass slippers. Glass slippers. And I have got something on my table here that keeps making my writing bump. Okay. And the rough-faced girl, her clothing, remember, they wore buckskin dresses, and a buckskin is a deer hide, okay? So they hunt for deer to eat, and because they didn't have the grocery store to go shopping in, so they hunted the animals that lived in their surroundings, and there happened to be a lot of deer up there in the woods, and so they hunted for deer, and not only did they eat their meat, but they also used everything from those deer, so there was no waste. They used the bones for tools, and they'd use the bones for weapons, and they could use the skin as blankets. They could use it for to put around their teepee as the outside walls. They could use it for clothes. So we're going to say buckskin dress. And the shoes is moccasins, and M-O-C, moccasins. I hope I spelled that right. Okay. And those were the leather shoes. Okay. So what does this tell you about the culture? Okay. So in Cinderella, remember, they would not have paid her any attention if she was dressed up as her usual wear, a peasant. They would not have paid her any mind. Remember, on the second ball night, she had left after the stroke of midnight, so as she was running, all of her pretty things disappeared, and when the prince ran out after her, he asked, did anybody see her? And nobody saw her. All they told him that they saw was some peasant girl walking by, or running by. So they didn't realize that that was her. So the clothing was very important to that culture, okay? To be, you had to be fancy, fancy clothing to get noticed. Fancy clothing, that's one of our older fluency words, to get noticed, to be seen. Okay? And in the rough-faced girl, remember the sisters, they asked for the new buckskin dress, the new necklaces, the new jewelry, the new shoes, the new moccasins, so that they could get themselves ready to go meet the invisible being, because that was how they were going to be noticed. And they strutted through the village and, with their heads held up high, just very confident, knowing that they were going to be the ones that were chosen by him because they were dressed the most beautiful. So their clothing was very important to their culture as well. And when the rough-faced girl went by, even though she had fixed her father's moccasins, they weren't the best, and they still flop, flop, flop like duck's feet. But they looked better than bare feet, and she had used some birch wood to fix her buckskin dress. And she strutted through because she was also confident, but she knew in her heart that she hadn't seen the invisible being. It wasn't a lie from her. She knew that she had seen him, and she was going to prove that. But remember what everybody else thought. They were all laughing at her like, this girl is crazy. She really thinks that the invisible being's going to notice her because look at her clothes. Why would anybody pay her any attention? And so that tells us about that culture as well, that the fancy clothing they needed to wear fancy clothing to get noticed. Okay, so it's the same for both. Their fancy clothes were very important to their cultures. All right, and that is it for today.